So, first of all, I have a general question because quite a lot of questions come in and I get through them quite slowly. So maybe it depends on the translators, but maybe we can do some additional dates. One possibility would be to have a whole day of Q&A, maybe in the autumn, and just go through lots of them. So if you have some thoughts about that, maybe you could send in a message to the SB Sangha, and I will think about it over the summer. Well, the first question this evening is concerning a passage from the Pali Sutta, the Bāhiya Sutra. And this man called Bāhiya, he has been chasing after the Buddha, trying to get an answer to his question. Oh, the third time he manages to ask his question, the Buddha stops and replies. So he says to the Buddha, teach me Dharma, so that it will be for my good and happiness for a long time. And the Buddha says, herein, Bāhiya, you should train yourself thus. In the seen will be merely what is seen. In the heard will be merely what is heard. In the sensed will be merely what is sensed. In the cognized will be merely what is cognized. In this way you should train yourself, Bāhiya. So then he says, this is the Buddha, when Bāhiya, for you in the seen there is merely what is seen, in the cognized is merely what is cognized, then Bāhiya, you will not be with that. When Bāhiya, you are not with that, then Bāhiya, you will not be in that. When Bāhiya, you are not in that, then you will be neither here nor beyond nor in between the two. Just this is the end of suffering. So, in the Dzogchen and Tantric tradition, we are very familiar with this issue. When you have an experience like seeing or hearing, and it seems immediately obvious to you that I see something, I hear something, then you stand in relation to what you hear or see. And then you can make some commentary on it. But the Buddha is saying, if you're not with what is occurring and you're not in what is occurring, then you find this position which is free of any relativizing between self and other. All day long, we have streams of experience arising through our senses. What is happening? Now, here he's talking from the Theravadan position. Oh, he's saying, keep it simple, don't elaborate. That is to say, see when you're seeing, don't add thinking to seeing. And when you're thinking, don't add the other senses as well. Because in the Theravadan approach, the key difficulty is seen as compounding, as bringing the constitutive elements like the 5 skandhas, the 5 heaps, bringing these together so that some composite structure is presented. So if you leave seeing as seeing and hearing as hearing, as hearing, and you don't add them together to build up a kind of global interpretation from myself, I know what is happening, then you don't get tied in knots. That is to say, the simple arising of experience is always a vanishing experience. So if you don't build it up, then you won't have anything to hold on to. So this is very similar to our practice in Dzogchen. We relax and open ourselves to the intrinsic openness of the mind. Within this openness, all kind of momentary experiences arise. Some might seem to be outside, like the sound of a car or a dog barking. Some might appear to be inside us, some sensation in the body or a memory or an intention. The key point is, don't make something of it. We make something of a transient experience by approaching it with our question, what is this? What directs us towards an existent, something that is there? So this is the deceiving axiom or assumption that there is an existence that we have to relate to. Once we enter into that, the energy of subject to object, of me grasping at this, something is happening for me, that energy brings in all kind of opinions and judgments and feeling tones and so on. As a very simple example, maybe you come home and you're thirsty and you think, I'll have a cup of tea. And maybe there's somebody there and they say, oh, you look tired, I'll make the tea for you. What kind of tea do you want? I want a cup of tea. That's quite simple. Now in the kitchen, there's many teas, herbal teas, Assam tea, Darjeeling tea. What kind of tea do I want? Now it's becoming kind of complicated. If I had gone into the kitchen myself to make the tea, there would be no what kind of tea. I just take the tea and make the tea. In that way, when we have a lot of choices, we can formulate possibilities and potentials in many different directions. So, in this Theravada text, the Buddha is saying the end of suffering comes when you don't complicate your experience. Because, and this is the difficult paradox, when you try to simplify a situation, you often make it more complicated. The question, what kind of tea do you want, could be a simplifying question. But now I have to think about what I want, which leads to more thoughts about possibilities. So he's saying, return to your senses, don't elaborate. Okay, so now we have a different kind of question. It's probably a bit out of date. It says, some months ago, I was abandoned by my partner. Due to this, I am suffering, not on a mental level, but on an emotional one. The only practice that helps me is the tantric practice of Padmasambhava. Yet I still feel grief. So how to manage and liberate the effect of the afflictive emotions, given that when they appear, what arises is very complicated and I can't find the source. Oh, there's different aspects to this. One is the desire to get rid of grief. I've been abandoned, I feel lost and lonely, and I'm tormented by this inner feeling of grief. It's not a pleasant feeling. So we can approach this in two ways. We can see it as a problem that I want to get rid of. the memories of how it was, my hope that the relationship would have continued. These thoughts and emotions torment me. So we could take the path of trying to manage the content of our experience so that we get more of what we like and less of what we don't like. But of course, that's hard to do because our emotions can seem to have a life of their own. And they just well up without us knowing when they'll come. Oh, the world is full of sad, lonely, unhappy people. From the point of view of the Bodhisattva vow, we can open ourselves to them. We can do the giving and receiving Tonglen practice, this rather strange practice of taking the suffering of others into ourselves and giving our happiness to others. The purpose of this kind of practice is to displace us from being centered in our own interpretation of our life. As long as we're thinking, this is terrible, it shouldn't be happening to me, it doesn't happen to other people, and so on, then one thought leads to another, and the thought triggers emotions, and we never get free. So if I take other people's suffering into myself, and I notice that I don't die, I start to see my mind is actually quite open. I can host a lot of suffering, and the suffering fills the expanse of my mind like dark thunder clouds, and then it passes. The problem lies with identification and merging into the experience. And from the Dzogchen point of view, if we do the Guru Yoga of the White R and rest in openness, what we're doing is depersonalizing experience. Experience is arising. This is undeniable. I feel bad, I feel lonely, sad, and so on. But it's not happening to me unless I pick it up. That is to say, when we are present, when we are just open, our mind is like the sky or like space. We experience the movements of sensation that we would normally call my body. We experience a pattern of thoughts that we would normally say my mind, arising and passing. So it's as if I go to the beach and I take a stick and I draw a circle 3 meters across. This is my place, but it's the beach. I don't own this circle of sand, but I think it's my bit of sand, my bit of beach. And it's the beach. The sand inside my circle and the sand outside my circle is not different. The difference is I am claiming, by making this mark on the sand, by putting my sign onto the sand, I am separating mine and not mine. You meet someone, you like them, you say, my love. They are a person, but they are my love. And because you are my love, you shouldn't kiss anyone else. Your lips belong to me. So this desire to own and possess and have a stable entitlement is very powerful in us. This is the mind. If I get on the train and I sit in a seat, and then half an hour later I get up and go to the toilet, if when I come back someone else is sitting in my seat, I say, excuse me, that is my seat, but it's just a seat on the train. There are other empty seats on the train. I could easily move to a new seat, but it's my seat. Please, could you go to another seat? I don't want to move because it's my seat. So there we see attachment flows very, very easily onto objects where there is no intrinsic basis for them. And having claimed an ownership to what is essentially a public commodity, I now make my emotions vulnerable. So when we experience bereavement and loss and sadness and broken hearts, the underlying glue which binds us into this feeling is our own sense that we were the owner. This is mine, this belongs to me. Oh. In Dharma, we are encouraged to think of all sentient beings wandering in samsara. Due to causes and conditions, we spend more or less time with someone. There is a dynamic of arising of karmic energy or habit formation, which keeps this connection in place. Just as when we read about the life in the six realms, due to causes and conditions, we're born in a sensuous God realm. We enter into that realm with a certain amount of karmic resources in the bank. And when it's burnt up, we fall out of that realm. While we're there, we think this is my place. I'm here. I've been here a long time. I like it here. But that's our fantasy. What was keeping us in that place was not our kind of intrinsic entitlement, but a particular patterning of cause and effect. So it's the same for being in a relationship, whether you develop a good relationship with your children or not, your relationship with your body. Generally in this life, I've had a fairly healthy body. Now I get sick more easily. So how my body was, how my situation was, is different. Being healthy was not a property that belonged to me. It arises due to causes and conditions. So if we immerse ourselves in this view or this understanding, then we see the transient nature of all patterns of interaction. In general, there is stillness and movement. The reliable stillness rests in the empty ground of the mind. Everything else, all experience is movement. If you try to stabilize what is essentially movement, you will suffer. So the next question is regarding the question of free will. So he says, many public intellectuals propound the view that all choices are entirely predetermined, determined by factors such as genes, environment, diet, and upbringing. So that actually free will or free choice is an illusion. And the question is such a view of extreme determinism compatible with teachings of Buddhism and Dzogchen? No, it is absolutely incompatible. It may be that when we do the practice and don't interfere with or try to manage the nature of the thoughts and feelings that arise, it seems that we we are abandoning any sense of choice. But what we're doing actually is we are shifting from a domain of dualistic choice to non-dual choice. So an experience is arising. I am the experiencer. But if I'm in an egoic positioning, I'm not open and neutral like a mirror. I have an orientation which is shifting moment by moment in terms of I like, I don't like. And so generally I want to choose what I like and not choose or not receive what I don't like. This means that my choices are, although they're moving out in terms of the factors in the environment around me, are essentially self-referential. So when we do our practice and we relax ourselves from involvement in our habit formations, we are gradually softening the intensity of our habit of particular kinds of involvement. So that if we stay with the practice, we start to experience an equanimity. And a happy thought and a sad thought are equal in status. This is not an ideological position. I'm not trying to convince myself that pleasure and pain are the same. They are manifestly not the same, but they are both empty of inherent existence, arising due to causes and circumstances. They are present and then vanish. And so as my tendency to pattern my experience to get more of what I want and less of what I don't want, as that patterning tendency declines, then when I come up from the meditation and I'm moving in the world with others, the self-referential mediation of how I will be with you starts to thin. That is to say, instead of being concerned with you for me, your significance and value for me, I can pay attention to you for you. And this is very important, because you for me is held in place by my idea of you. But when my attention is on you for you, you as you are, I experience you not as an idea which I hold, but as an ever-changing patterning of the revelation of how you are. And this makes you more interesting, because I can't know you. I can't incorporate you as you are into my template. In fact, by attending to your freshness, you help to dissolve my template. So in that way, the kindness or the connectivity of actually being with you as you manifest helps me to de-reify my experience and thereby to be more open to how you are. So from the point of view of Dzogchen, we sidestep this issue of free will or determinism and stay within the spontaneity of the non-dual field. So then there's a question, does seeking emotional support from other people contradict our seeking refuge in the three jewels? How can I reconcile them? Clearly, if we are fortunate, we can get some emotional support from family and friends, perhaps from teachers, perhaps from therapists of some kind. But usually their capacity to help and the direction or tendency of their help is conditioned by the belief they have about what it means to be a human being. So, for example, if somebody close to you dies, your friends might be there and they help you to talk about your feelings. They might say after some time, these things happen, people die, we have to accept this is part of life and move on. Whereas somebody who has taken refuge in the three jewels might say, yes, your mother has died and you will die and you don't know when you will die. Perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow. Who are you? You're going to die and you don't know who you are. Now, that might not sound very friendly, but if you're in Dharma, it might be very friendly and help to awaken you from your assumption, oh, I will have a long life, everything will be fine. So basically, Dharma offers a path to liberation. Friendship with human beings usually does not offer a path of liberation. So as long as you know the difference between these two, you can have good friendships and be supportive in a relative truth way. So then there's a question, someone is looking for treasure texts from our lineage which cover the whole of the path and all the stages, and a list of all the treasure texts with a short description of each, indicating which are available in English. We don't have this. Not many people choose to study Tibetan. We are very, very fortunate that coming from Tibet, there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of volumes of texts which are very rich and able to provide an overview of the path and very detailed description of how to practice. But we have very little work going on translating these texts into English. And then usually they go from English into other languages. This points to a big issue in Buddhism in the West. That is to say, we can become passive. We go to a teaching and somebody explains and we sit there and absorb some of it and then go away. But Dharma doesn't exist out there. It is called into being available by the quality of our participation. So this is a question for everyone. What do I do in my life to support the spreading of Dharma? Can you support the translators who put the books from English into your own language? Can we support people who want to learn Tibetan and become translators? This is something you can actively seek out to do. So today we seem to have very big questions. The next is where to find a Dzogchen teacher in India. I think if you go to India, you have to travel a lot around and listen to what people say and to check out different teachers. Because with some kind of practices like general shamatha and vipassana, they have very simple, straightforward instructions. You have descriptions of what to do. But Dzogchen is concerned more with how to be, how not to obscure the intrinsic purity of your presence. And so how you relate to the teacher becomes part of the process of how you learn to open more to yourself. So you have to explore and have your own experience. But how will I know? You won't know. Maybe you make a mistake. Even if you make a mistake, you can learn something from that. Everything is the path. If you focus on how did I get lost? This world is a wild and dangerous place. We have to learn how to see things as they are. No one can do this work for us. So then another question is, maybe from the same person, I am a young man and want to have sex with others, but I have a tendency to attachment. How to relate without attachment? This is a difficult question. If you have no attachment, no emotional involvement, you might become a psychopathic exploiter, because we have a body and a voice and a mind. And our life becomes rich and full when all three are activated. Purely physical sex has some advantage, but in the end, it's a depletion of our potential. But perhaps the best defense against attachment is appreciative enjoyment. That you really see the qualities of the other person and you appreciate what impact this has on you. And you see they are not an object or a possession that you could have, but neither are they just something to pick up and throw down. So when we do our practice, appreciation is the quality that allows each thought, each feeling, memory, and so on to arise and pass without editing. We appreciate it as it is. So then the third aspect for this person is, I cling to my thoughts too much and rely on them. When I sit in practice, I evaluate my experience and wonder if I'm doing it right and whether I'm becoming attached to these experiences. I think you can know if you're attached because you will be looking to repeat the experience or chasing after it. We evaluate things by locating them in terms of some interpretive template. But the focus of our practice is to see that the mind is like space. This is a public arena. It's just open. The clouds don't belong to anyone. They're in the sky, but they arise and pass. So when we do the Guru Yoga of the White R, we move from the egoic idea that this is my mind, these are my memories, I need to make them happen the way I want them. Oh, this is an open space. All kinds of things come. I'm not the owner, and I'm not in charge, and I'm not the maker. Now, this is offering redundancy to the ego. And the ego will resist. So learning to relax and open without this provoking kind of retaliation from the ego's desire to exist eternally, that can take some time. It's just coming and going. So two things are happening. I'm letting go of my sense of self as a reference point, in the sense of, what does this mean for me? Do I like this or not? These questions are irrelevant Because what is arising is self-arising and self-vanishing. If I say good, bad, right, wrong, what does this do? Ordinarily, it's as if I'm trying to penetrate beneath the surface and find the true value of what is happening, which is how we look around the world, as if I need to think about this. I need to see what's really going on. But nothing is really going on. There is occurrence like an illusion. The reflection comes in the mirror and goes. It leaves no trace. When we don't interfere, when this egoic desire to claim and form and shape is let go of, then there is arising and passing. Nothing to evaluate on the object side or the subject side, because these are not fixed positions. These are momentary revelations of patterns. Okay, so then the next question is, what is the Dzogchen view of trauma? Do you think it gets released via meditation? Or do you think other modalities may need to be practiced? Oh, if I've understood correctly, the original idea of a trauma is a wound. That the integrity of our skin bag, of our embodied being, is interrupted by a knife blade or something falling on our head. The other has come into us in a disturbing way. Every day we eat and drink something. So we are used to food and drink, which is other, becoming self by being incorporated into the body. The difference with a trauma is that something has come into the body or onto the body and stays. It could come as intrusive thoughts. It could come as a biochemical formation like a disease or COVID. If you get hepatitis, it has an impact on your liver. And this affects your energy and other aspects of your life. So generally, a trauma means an interruption to how it was before the trauma arrived. So for meditators, difficult situations, trauma situations can be very useful because they highlight, I am not who I think I am. The pattern of self that I had has been rendered invalid by this attack or invasion. So someone might say, oh, I don't feel like myself anymore. This new formation doesn't feel like me. Yet functionally, it is new. So if you go for therapy or a medical intervention, they will attempt to repair the damage. We say recover. But to recover is to cover up again. And for meditators, profound disturbances in our body, in our speech, in our mind, shock us into waking up from the sleep of assumption. I'm not who I thought I was. That could be something very, very helpful. Anyway, we know we're going to die. And the constellation of the factors of our body, voice, and mind are shifting with the factors in the world around us. So traumas like childhood sexual abuse or early death of a parent or difficulties learning in school and being humiliated the impact of these kind of events can be softened by meditation practice. The difference from a psychotherapy approach would be is that in psychotherapy you would seek to focus on, as it were, the object side, what happened, what impact it has, what was experienced. Whereas from the Dharma point of view, we are more concerned with who is the experiencer. And we have these two levels, the relative level and the absolute level. On the relative level, I, James, this person, am the experiencer of my life. Events happen and they impact the shape that I take to be my normal constellation of potential. And sometimes that feels good, sometimes it feels bad. That's me as a person. But as we've looked many times together, personhood is a kind of fake news. I am my identity. From the Dharma point of view, our identity is like a mask which covers the freshness of our presence. And so a painful event happens. You go to the hospital and they give you a diagnosis that you need a lot of treatment and you might die. We know we're going to die. Shouldn't really be a big surprise. When the thought arises, but I don't want to die in this way, this is a thought. The thought is some feeling tone massaged into it. There is some fear and unhappiness, but I don't want to die in this way. That's a thought. If we go back to our practice, we do the 3R Guru Yoga and we sit, and these kind of thoughts come again and again, and we could merge or not. Oh, in that moment of choice, whether I merge into the thought or not, the options on the menu are existence or presence. Awareness is relaxed and open, like the mirror. It has no self-formation. But when we merge into a thought and we take it to be a representative, helpfully defining who I am, then we're strengthening the fusional nature of our identity. You are going to die. Who is going to die? The person who thinks that they are you. Oh, does that mean if I don't think I'm me, I won't die? Hey, that's pretty good. The one who dies is identification. If you look back in your life, there are so many shapes and qualities and emotions that you have identified with very strongly. And they have vanished. Who you were before puberty, who you were as a teenager, then coming into adult life. Each of these formations you fully identified with, and they're gone. But in the moment of identification, it is as if this is the truth of me. This is me. This is the delusion of taking the transient to be eternal. So the more we see that this pattern is transient, arising as the interplay of many factors, then we see that trauma belongs to identity and not to presence. Presence cannot be defined. It's never an object for the mind. Your awareness cannot be defined by the thoughts that arise in your mind. Yet your identity, your sense of being this specific person, this is very much defined by the pattern of your thoughts, feelings, sensations, and so on. And presence allows us to participate in the world of forms. We have access to the great potential of the mind, which allows us to manifest many, many different formations in the service of connecting with others. So in that sense, identities flow out of presence, like the 8 forms of Padmasambhava. But it doesn't quite go in the other direction, because identity resists opening to presence. So somebody who has been abused and exploited may cling on to this identity of being an abused person. And although there is truth in what happened to you, this does not need to be the defining truth of you. Because if you merge into a tight definition, it will be very difficult to relax and open to unborn presence. Okay, so that is our time this evening. Thank you to our translators. And thank you to you all for your participation. And we have, I think, one more meeting before the summer break. And I'll think about some program for some Zoom teaching in the autumn. So if you have any thoughts about that, you can also send them into the SB Sangha. So, good evening.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
James.
Bye, James.
Bye.
Thank you.
Organizers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
tech
you very
support.
much, everyone. Bye, everyone. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Let's go.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.